Yep.
Good evening. It is 5 p.m. I'm going to call this meeting of the Norfolk City Council to order to have this work session. I'd like to inform the public about the location of the Open Meetings Act, which is posted right over here in the council chambers and accessible to all members of the public. So, could we have a roll call, please?
Arns.
Here.
Clausen.
Here.
Granquist.
Here.
Hildebrand.
Here.
Jackson.
Here.
McCarthy.
Here.
Merrill.
Here.
Murin.
Here.
Mayor.
So, to start this discussion relative to the work session, we'll call on Candace Altner.
Good evening, councilmen. Thank you so much for giving up your Monday evening to come learn more about this process. Back in July, you approved a contract with Progressive Urban Management Associates, and since then, they've been engaging with your downtown property owners, stakeholders, individuals that live in the downtown district to really put together a downtown management plan. And that's involved a series of different ways that they've interacted with the downtown stakeholders, including stakeholder meetings in late August. And then we had some Zoom meetings that we engaged with different stakeholders at throughout the month of September and October. And then they're back here in November. This is their second visit. They've been visiting with other property owners and downtown business owners today, and then they're going to be telling you a little bit about their findings from the different the survey that they put out. That survey is actually open until the end of the week, so it's not going to be your final survey results, but you're going to get a taste of what the feedback that they've been receiving, and then a little bit about some of the stakeholder conversations that they've been having. I'm going to introduce now Brad Segal and Amanda Kennard, and just let them come up and kind of walk you through what they found out so far.
Great, thanks Candace. Good evening, council members. I'm Brad Siegel. This is my colleague Amanda Kennard. We are with a firm called Puma. We're based in Denver. I'm actually from Denver and have been working in downtown and community development work my whole career, so about 35 years. We have worked in Nebraska and a number of communities around you, so Sioux Falls, Sioux City, Lincoln, Omaha. Our first roll into Norfolk was in August, and I got to tell you, we were really impressed by the community here and by your downtown. It's just a wonderful gem, and our understanding, a lot of this is fairly recent, that the last 5 to 10 years, you've seen a lot of new investment, a lot of new businesses, restaurants, and improvements in your downtown. So our project really looks at two things. We're looking at what's next for downtown Norfolk. And then also we're looking at how do we sustain this success of downtown, and how do we as a community continue to support the small businesses, the unique attraction that we're creating in downtown. So in terms of the information we're going to present to you tonight, next slide, please. Amanda and I are going to take turns. We're going to talk a bit about what our process is, our planning process, where we are. To determine what's next downtown, a lot of our work is really based on what the community wants. So we have spent a lot of time since August and during this trip and in between really trying to get a sense from Norfolk residents in terms of what are their priorities, what do they want to see in their downtown. So we're going to talk tonight about what we've heard in the community. We have a community survey that's up and running, and we are going to give you some real-time results. So the results of the community survey are actually from this weekend. So we've got more than 650 responses now to our community survey. That community survey is up through the end of the week. And we'll be talking about it several times and encouraging folks to chime in if they haven't had that opportunity yet. We'll pause after we talk about what we've heard from the community. And then the second part of our presentation gets into district management and governance. How do we manage our success? and what are our options moving forward to really have the best downtown that we can have in the long term. Next slide, please. So next slide, please. So quick overview of process, and Candace mentioned this in the introduction. We got started during the summer. This is our second visit to town. We're listening a lot to the community. We are looking at best practices, so we're looking at other communities in Nebraska and in nearby states to inspire different practices that we may want to employ here. The management plan, which gets into sustaining downtown success, will get into what are our objectives for the future. Looking at the existing vehicle parking district, should we make adjustments there in terms of its boundaries, its service plan, its budget, its assessment methodology, and governance structure? And then what we are not, we're currently contracted to do all those things in step one. What we're not contracted to do is step two. Do we make significant changes to what we have? So we are here to provide an objective evaluation of, number one, how do we optimize our existing resources? How do we do the most we can with our existing resources? And then secondly, if we need additional resources, what are the potential steps for doing that? Next slide, please. So next slide, please. In terms of community outreach, I'll talk for just 3 or 4 slides here about what we've heard from downtown stakeholders, and then Amanda will provide an overview of what we're hearing from the 650 plus responses to the online survey. In terms of downtown stakeholders, at this point, we have met with more than 75 downtown property owners, businesses, and some community leaders that have a downtown interest. Most of this is one-on-one while we've been on site. So in August, we were able to meet with more than 50 different downtown stakeholders. That's continued today, being on site. And then also we did have some remote meetings as well. Next, please. So from the downtown point of view, the point of view of the people who own businesses in downtown, who own property, this is what they feel are the strengths and the challenges and the priorities for downtown. In terms of strengths, a lot of folks, virtually everybody we've talked to, I don't know if we've talked to anybody that's unhappy with how downtown has evolved over the last 5 to 10 years. There is universal, we have found almost universal positive energy about the transformation here. And again, we were not here 10, 15 years ago. So for those who have been here for a while, from almost everybody we've heard, it's been pretty remarkable. So the mix of businesses, the owners of the businesses are engaged with their customers and with the future of downtown. Your downtown really has been part of a regional destination, pulling not just from Norfolk, but from the vast region that you serve. There's some improvements that the city has made that have been received favorably. For example, swapping out the stoplights for the stop signs along Norfolk. That may or may not have been a difficult decision at the time, but I'll tell you, the property and business owners downtown look very favorably on that. It's helped their business. It's helped create a walkable downtown. And then the riverfront. There's a lot of excitement about the riverfront improvements. In terms of challenges from downtown businesses and property owners, there still are now empty and underutilized properties off of Norfolk Avenue, so a lot of the success has been pretty much concentrated on the main drag, if you will. So is there some opportunity to move some of that energy beyond? We've heard a lot about, and this is not just a downtown priority, but really a city priority to attract and retain younger demographics here. Folks, young people, they grow up here, they move, go to college, sometimes they don't come back. And downtown is seen as part of that strategy. How do we get young people to move back here? And having a lively mix of restaurants, stores, things to do is part of that strategy. Shockingly, the parking experience, virtually every town we work in has some level of frustration with parking. We've heard that here. And our sense, this may be more of a parking management issue than actual supply. There is parking But in terms of finding parking, sometimes that can be difficult. And we can go into that in Q&A if you're interested in some thoughts there. Let's go next. So priorities, and these priorities which we initially heard from the downtown property and business owners, these priorities we're also testing with the community at large. So I'm going to identify them, and then Amanda will tell you how the community is ranking these things. So when we talked to the property and business owners, in terms of physical improvements, we looked at physical improvements and services. On the physical improvements, we heard about a need to improve lighting in downtown, particularly off of Norfolk Avenue. The parking experience, could we make that easier for folks who are coming down here? Improving streets that are side streets currently or are not off of Norfolk Avenue, so Madison, alleys, other streets. More wayfinding, and again, as it relates to parking signage, help us find where the parking is. Public art, public restrooms were other priorities. Next. And then on services and programs, and again, from property and business owners, making sure that downtown is welcoming and inclusive for everyone in the community. Downtown really should be the living room for Norfolk, where everybody in town feels that they can be comfortable down here. Some of the business owners think that we would benefit from having a downtown manager, a person, a part-time or full-time person who would really manage a lot of the marketing, the promotions, and troubleshoot issues like parking. Improve marketing of downtown and in fact, better inform Norfolk residents of what's happening down there on a week-to-week basis. And at that point, I think I'm going to step aside, and Amanda is going to go over what we're hearing from the online survey. Again, the survey remains open through the end of the week. These results are as of this past weekend.
Yeah, so like Brad said, I'm just going to kind of briefly touch on what we've heard in the survey thus far. So this slide kind of highlights who we've heard from in survey responses so far. We've really gotten a pretty good cross-section of particularly age and income demographics, but we have in responses seen mostly white and mostly female respondents. And we actually have heard from a great cross-section of local residents as well. So a large percentage of folks living in the city of Norfolk, a lot of folks living elsewhere in Madison County, and actually 15% of respondents said that they live either in or within walking distance of downtown, which is great. So we asked folks kind of what they think about Norfolk today. So we asked, what are the top 3 things that bring people downtown? Restaurants and bars was the top response, and special events and festivals was next, and shopping was the 3rd top response. We also asked folks how they would rate various services and programs that exist within downtown today. So actually overall, folks rated things either good or very good of the programs and services we provided. The only things that folks identified as poor or very poor were housing options and parking options. So next we asked folks in an open-ended format, so we provided comment boxes and people could write whatever they'd like. So what 3 words come to mind when you think of downtown today? The top responses are highlighted on the slide there. Parking was number 1, growing was number 2, improved, fun, food, and finally expensive. So next we asked folks looking to the future what 3 words capture their vision for downtown Norfolk in 2030. So again, the top response was parking, followed by friendly, family, retail, safe. And you can see in these word clouds here, the larger the word, the more responses it got. So just in looking at this slide, that's the meaning of the word cloud there. So next, like Brad said, we developed a menu of options from what we heard in our outreach to downtown stakeholders, and we sorted things into two buckets, those physical improvements and then services and programs. So this first question is asking, from the list we provided, what's the one most important action that people want to see as far as physical improvements go in downtown? So top 3 responses: increase lighting throughout downtown. So interestingly, while parking was the #1 open-ended response on what people want to see looking forward, it was not the top response when people were asked about one physical improvement, but it was the second top response, so at 26%. And then finally, in third was enhance those side streets, Madison Avenue, the streets intersecting Norfolk Avenue, like Brad said, kind of spreading that energy around a little bit. So here's that same question, just asking about programs and services. Again, we asked folks to pick which one action they think is most important. So #1, fill empty and underutilized storefronts. #2, continue to hold events and activate public spaces downtown. And then finally, improve safety. So we also asked folks if they were to consider living in downtown Norfolk, what type of housing they would most desire. So 45% of respondents indicated that they would consider living downtown, which is pretty remarkable. And the top housing types that folks selected, condominiums was #1, apartments was #2, and townhomes were #3. So I think this is our final question that we're highlighting today on the survey results. But we asked folks, when they think of downtown, which of the areas on the map on the screen there do they think about? And we also provided don't know as a response, just in case folks weren't sure. But #1 was the response that people most identified with. So over half of respondents indicated that the area in green on the map there could be part of downtown. That's the area that includes Hy-Vee, the Dollar General, and some other commercial businesses. And then the other responses that we provided, the Eastern Norfolk Avenue corridor and the Riverfront corridor, people didn't really identify with those as being part of downtown quite as much. I think that's it.
Yeah. So with that, we actually thought we'd pause for a few minutes and see if we have more to talk about related to how we organize ourselves for downtown, but we thought we'd pause with the community engagement information, the survey information, and see if there was anything, any questions, or if there's anything that may have surprised council members or not surprised council members about the responses.
When they say parking options, did they give ideas of what they were looking for as far as parking options?
Good question. The bottom line with parking in a lot of towns we work with, I think here too, is I think people expect to park at their destination. So if they're going to a storefront on Norfolk Avenue, I think there's an expectation, I want that parking spot, bam, that's going to deliver me there. So our sense here is it's about convenience, #1. We want parking that's convenient. We also feel, and this is something that we've been talking to city staff about, we also feel there's areas of improvement to help people understand where parking is. There's actually a fair number of parking lots that are just off of Norfolk Avenue. They're relatively convenient. Last year, the vehicle parking district simplified those lots, made all that parking free. And it's interesting to us, not many people are aware of that. They still don't understand that that's free parking and that's available to them. So I think part of this is also information. So our sense, again, is that this is not so much a supply problem as it is how we manage it and how we help people navigate to the parking that they need.
So we went through a process about 6, 7, 8 months ago with the wayfinding. We got some signage put downtown. So maybe we need to enhance on that?
Yeah, our understanding is you have more wayfinding on the way, and we'll have a list of suggestions and recommendations coming out of this work, and some of it may be near-term ideas, and certainly the notion of can we have larger, more distinct signs that tell people, that parking is located in a certain direction, so that it's easy for them and intuitive. Also, the notion of the free parking, making that more clear, that these lots, and the on-street too, but the lots are free and they don't have the time limitations that the on-street does.
Brad, I do have a question for you.
Sure.
You had the most important word was lighting. Do you do any drill down questions on that? Are they looking for more lighting for safety or more for aesthetics? Do you know?
Our sense is that the lighting issue downtown is related to safety and the perception of safety. And so the survey can tell us part of this, but the other part is we need to drill down and get into the nuance of what it means with a lot of the downtown stakeholders, so with the property and business owners. And what we learned, and by the way, we've been staying downtown, so the River Point, which has, 6 or 7 hotel rooms, it's wonderful. Anyone in the community that has a guest, they should stay downtown. But we've been staying downtown, so we've been able to sort of experience your downtown 24/7 in terms of all hours. It is dark once you get off of Norfolk Avenue. I mean, the main street is fairly well lit. Your alleys are very dark. Some of the side streets, it's a little inconsistent. So there are lighting issues off of Norfolk Avenue. In talking with many of the stakeholders downtown, the sense was that it's not that it's necessarily unsafe, but it feels that way. If you're walking alone late at night, because it's relatively dark, once you get off the main street, it can be a little intimidating. So that's a sense we got. Is that anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, I also think we did hear from downtown stakeholders that people are interested in creative opportunities for lighting as well. So we've heard a little bit about doing some festival type lighting in different areas in downtown. So in addition to the kind of practical safety related lighting concerns, I think people also want to see that as kind of a place-making, place enhancement opportunity as well.
Animating your alleys seems like an opportunity that maybe in the next 5 years we take a look at. And lighting would be part of that.
As far as housing options, you said that was a big issue. They brought up what was, there's not enough, there's not, what is there they don't like?
Yeah, the housing issue really seems to be about supply and lack of supply. We were surprised that in the survey, in the community survey, that 45% of the respondents so far said they would consider living downtown. That's actually a really high response for a community, and particularly for a community, mid-sized community of your size. So one, we think there's an appetite for it. Two, people are interested in condominiums, apartments, townhouses. So downtown you could have potentially more density than you could in other parts of town. And then the last thing I'll say is what we've found in other communities, and I suspect we'll find it when we start to slice and dice the data here. Typically, it's younger respondents under 40, and then it's boomers like myself, people over 60, who tend to be really interested in these types of housing choices. So that's to us, it's a reflection of the success on Norfolk Avenue, the fact you've created an amenity with all the restaurants, all the shops that people now want to live around, and they want to live so they can walk to dinner or walk to lunch, whatever it may be.
Brad, did you have a sense of, as far as housing goes, was that data particular to the areas 1, 2, and 3 that you're showing in the survey, or was it adjacent to those?
So this was just for downtown.
Just for those areas in the
Maybe for-
that you're listing in the survey?
Yeah. The map was its own question, but this was just a general question within the survey for everybody, and we didn't really define downtown, but the notion of living downtown, was that attractive to folks?
I was also curious whether tiny houses got brought up?
Not so much.
Okay.
Now, we had single-family homes as an option in there, and that rated lower than condos, apartments, and townhouses, which is pretty interesting. Yeah.
Very good.
Yep.
Thank you.
And unusual, I should mention. When we ask people what type of housing unit they'd like downtown, we often will get a higher concentration of single-family home, but not here. Let's go on. We'll go into the second part of the presentation. We can go back to the community engagement slides too. All of this is fair game. So the second part of our task, the first part is what's next downtown, and certainly in the next 5-10 years. What does the community want to see downtown? And that's where all the survey work is. And then the second part of our task is how do we best organize ourselves as a community to deliver this? So we're looking at a whole variety of different mechanisms and districts, and you have existing organizations. The existing vehicle parking district, for example, has been in place for about 40 years. There's a Downtown Norfolk Association, which is essentially a merchants association, a nonprofit within downtown. Recently, the community formed a creative district, and the creative district boundaries are somewhat similar to the downtown footprint. Riverfront district, this is something new at the state, and with the riverfront improvements, that's a potential district mechanism that could make sense here as well. So we've got all these different options that we're looking at, and what we're trying to do is really two things. One, how do we get the most out of what we have? So let's not necessarily add anything, but how do we get the most out of what we have? How do we optimize these different tools that we have? And then secondly, are we missing something? Are we missing a best practice? Could we improve something moving forward? So next slide, please. So on these slides, we won't overwhelm you with this stuff, but because there's a lot of words on these slides, but we want to give you a sense of what we're looking at in terms of different district options. So I mentioned earlier, we have a vehicle parking district. And one of the options moving forward is, do we just status quo? Is do we live with what we have? Or should we be modifying that existing vehicle parking district? Business improvement district. This is another mechanism under Nebraska statute. We have worked with business improvement districts in Lincoln and also in Omaha. Is this something that maybe could replace a vehicle parking district? Is it in some ways a better mechanism? So we're looking at that. This riverfront development district, this is a fairly new option under Nebraska statute, so we're throwing that into the mix. And then the creative district. We have it, it exists, we have a nonprofit that's championing it. But again, the footprint for the creative district is very similar to everything else that we're looking at. So we threw that in the mix too. So this table, and on the following slide too, this table will look at the different district options and really just describe it. In our work, we're going to do a benefit analysis. What makes sense in terms of, again, optimizing what we have, and then secondly, are we missing something that maybe we should add? So in terms of these districts, the first three, the vehicle parking district, the business improvement district, the riverfront development district, they're all somewhat similar in that they are they're quasi-governmental, quasi-municipal organizations that are allowed through Nebraska statute. They all allow for an assessment on property. Your vehicle parking district currently assesses 35 cents per $100 on properties that are within the vehicle parking district. That money is then earmarked for improvements within its boundaries by law. It must be spent for improvements within the downtown district. So the BID and the riverfront district, they also allow for these types of things. What are the focuses of these districts? The VPD and the BID, the vehicle parking district and the business improvement district, are pretty similar at this point. So your vehicle parking district was created 40 years ago, really focusing on parking, and you've done actually a really good job in terms of acquiring and improving different lots for parking. But that statute allows for a variety of other activities that are not too dissimilar from the business improvement district. So in addition to parking, you can get into promotions, beautification, other ways to enliven downtown. The Riverfront Development District is a similar entity, but really intended for rivers. So improvements along the type of river that you're making down here. And how do you bring those improvements out of the river and into the banks and into the surrounding properties? The Creative District is really about promoting and preserving the arts. There's also no assessment district, no assessment power with the Creative District. That thing does not assess. It receives grants. There's some grant opportunities from the state, but it's very different. The Creative District is different in terms of its power. To create these districts, there's a lot of similarities, but with all of them, with the first three, it boils down to a stop here. It requires a city council ordinance in order to create any of these districts. Next slide, please. And then we go on and we compare these different districts in terms of how they assess the pros and cons, the governance. So in the vehicle parking district, currently 35 cents on $100 is charged. That's a ceiling. That's a ceiling that's set by statute. Business improvement district has more flexibility. So potentially if we wanted to raise more money, or if the downtown property and business owners wanted to raise more money, there's more flexibility under the bid statute, as there is also with the Riverfront Development District. Creative District, again, no assessment. That's all about grant opportunities, sponsorships, those types of things. Pros and cons. The vehicle parking district, it's pretty flexible. It was intended originally to focus solely on parking, and it's just in recent years that it started to expand its scope and look at different improvements and promotions within downtown. Business Improvement District, similar mechanism, could potentially raise more funds, so that's probably the chief advantage in going to that. Riverfront Development District, this is new, our understanding, new in Nebraska. We don't know if a community has actually utilized this mechanism, so if you do go down this road, you could potentially be pioneers. Designed to be flexible, designed to really help be a catalyst for investment along rivers that are improved. So it's an interesting new entity that could also fit here. And then the Creative District, it really focuses again on arts as part of the economic development. And in Norfolk, that is well along. You're moving forward with your Creative District per the intentions of the statute there. And then lastly, governance. These all have, the first three have governance boards, advisory boards, and/or city council becomes the governance boards for these districts. The Creative District must have some sort of nonprofit organization. So there's several options here. Next slide. So with our last slide, one thing we really would like to explore with you is making sure we don't end up with a bunch of separate entities doing similar things in downtown. How can we connect these things? So what we're showing here is the notion of some sort of umbrella organization, and you may end up with more than one district. We may decide the vehicle parking district works fine, and maybe we want to add a riverfront district to this, but we do think it's likely that in terms of options, it's either going to be stay with what you have, or you might end up with a couple of these mechanisms. You also have the Creative District. You also have, again, the Downtown Merchants Association. So in our view, if these can all be connected, so there's just one place for all this activity, and we don't have separate places where people have to go to figure it out, that we're not ending up hiring a bunch of folks to run these things, but it's all sort of run in one place. So that's what this idea is on an umbrella organization. It's possible that the Downtown Norfolk Association itself, as a nonprofit, could serve at as that, and we wouldn't have to create anything new. So that's something we're going to look at. So with that, let's go to the next couple slides real quick. We will go back to questions on the governance, and there's a lot going on those slides, so it probably created a few questions. But we did, before we got into that, we did want to talk about our next steps. That online survey, open until the 18th. So we would encourage council members, anyone who's watching this on live stream, if we have any media types, if they could all help us sort of promote the survey through the week, the end of the week. We do have those 650 responses. That's a good number, but if we can push that a little higher, it'll just help us more. It'll enrich the data that we're collecting. And then our next step is then to make sense of all this. So if we identify priorities for what's next for downtown, how does that translate to how we manage all this? And that'll get into, do we keep what we have? Do we better organize what we have? Or is there something new that we should be throwing into the mix? We're hoping to be back and deliver all that information after the first of the year. We'll leave folks alone during the holidays, but come January, February, we'll have some recommendations for the council and the community to consider. So the next slide, I think, is, thank you. Yeah. So not only thank you, but I think we have time. We have what, till 6, is that right? 30 seconds. Oh my goodness, we've got plenty of time for questions on anything you may have found. And to the extent we can answer them, we'll do our best.
It seems like everyone here has been a part of these meetings in the past, but just for the folks who haven't, for clarification on what this tax is, who it applies to, and as far as the business owners versus the leasee, or who pays that, and can it be handed down to the leasee, that sort of thing? Is that, I think there's some people in here who probably haven't been here so far. So
yeah, so really what we're looking at is the vehicle parking district, and the vehicle parking district assesses a tax on property within the boundaries of the vehicle parking district, so only within downtown. And it's currently 35 cents on $100 of value. This does not affect any owner outside of downtown. And then it's really up to the property owner and the business owner in terms of what the lease looks like. So in some cases, a fee like this would be passed to the tenant, would be passed to the business. Some property owners do that. In other cases, if the lease doesn't provide for that, the property owner will pay for it. So probably important for folks in the room, we see a lot of familiar faces actually, but for folks in the room, that this is very much focused on downtown. And just leave it there.
perfect. Thank you.
So in one of your slides, I think you'd mentioned that if you go the BID route, that the BID could issue bonds backed by the city. Just for clarification, those bonds would run through the city council.
Correct, as would the vehicle parking district.
Yeah. Okay.
Randy, you're my truth check on this stuff.
I'm not aware of statutory authority for BID bonds.
Correct.
Vehicle parking district can do bonds. They have the full faith and credit backing of the city. I'm not aware of BID authority to issue bonds. Riverfront district can issue bonds, but they're specifically cannot have the full faith and credit backing of the city.
So a little clarification on that going forward.
Yeah, we'll be working with local legal counsel as we sort this out. There's a lot of nuance in the different statutes.
Okay.
And at this point, we're just trying to get a high-level understanding and do the best we can navigating. But as we get in the next stage of our work, we'll work with your staff and with legal counsel to make sure we get it right.
Great. Thank you.
On the formation steps for the BID, only requires 30% of frontage or by the users of 30% of commercial square foot space. That's just 30%, huh?
Yeah, that's what our reading of the statute is. There's actually several ways to form a BID. So it can either be formed by petition, or it can be formed, and this is how we did it in Lincoln, it can be formed, the council creates essentially a BID committee that develops a plan, submits it to the city, and then there's a city council hearing. And unless there's a protest from property owners, they can form it that way. So there are different avenues for forming these districts. in the different pieces of legislation. But the petition thresholds in the bid legislation are different from the petition thresholds in the vehicle parking district. All of them end up here.
So who are the stakeholders in the BID?
I'm sorry?
What is the BID made up of? Who's the stakeholders in that?
Similar to the vehicle parking district, it would be, if there is an assessment, it'd be on the property owners within the boundary of the BID. And then depending on their lease, some of that may be borne by the tenants.
Okay. So what's the benefits of that
The BID
versus the
versus the vehicle parking district. You know, as we get more immersed in the legislation and we start sorting it out, it seems like they both have similar powers. The BID allows more flexibility in the assessment itself. So it allows you to do two things that are important. One is it does allow a higher rate than the 35 cents if the downtown community feels it needs more resources. Secondly, and this is important, the BID allows for differential rates. So you can have different rates in different parts of downtown. So we did this in Lincoln, and essentially all of downtown is almost like a layer cake. All of downtown was paying a base rate for some base services. And then the core of downtown actually had another layer on their layer cake where they paid more for some more specific services. So that does seem to be an advantage of a business improvement district.
And that would be made up of people that have businesses and properties downtown. They're providing the suggestions on what happens.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we're up here talking today and we're taking all this in, but the people that it matters the most to are the people that have built and grown the businesses downtown.
Right.
Right. And so I don't want to be sitting up here and pretending that I've making decisions for these people that have put their heart and soul into developing this beautiful downtown the last 10 to 15 years. So it just, I don't want to get to a point where the city is now dictating to them what they need done. They should be dictating to us what they want done.
And we agree philosophically, Councilman. The way we work, if we're going to make changes to a district, we'd recommend that come from the property and business owners.
From them to,
Yeah, that they appeal. We actually like the petition route. Let's make sure we've got demonstrated support for any changes before it comes to this body. And our preference, regardless of statute, our preference is that you get a demonstration from a majority,
Right.
property and business owners representing a majority of folks downtown.
definitely.
No more questions. You're going to get rid of us early if you don't have any more questions.
Any other questions, folks?
What are the next steps, I guess?
Yeah, next steps. So after this trip and after we wrap up the survey, while everybody is enjoying, hopefully, a very fulfilling Thanksgiving and Christmas, we'll be working. And we'll be, again, making sense of everything that we've heard. And our report is likely going to have several options. We'll probably have 3 or 4 options for downtown. And ranging from the status quo, let's just leave it alone, to how do we do better with what we have. We think we'll have some recommendations for you on how you can optimize what you're getting from the current array of organizations. And then a third option might be, do we introduce some new district or do we replace something we have with a new district? So we'll come up with some options, and then the last step of our process is to come back to town, visit with the property and business owners, see if there's a preference one way or the other. And then ultimately, and Councilman Clausen, to your earlier comment, I mean, ultimately it'll be the downtown property and business owners that own this. So it's not up to the consultants. It's not our assessments. And to your point, this isn't something that the council unilaterally will decide, but it'll be up to the property and business owners. Do we want to leave it alone? Do we want to optimize what we have? Or do we want to try something different? And we'll lay that out. We'll lay that out in terms of costs, pros and cons.
Will the property owners also determine the boundary?
Yeah, we'll make recommendations on that as well.
Any other questions, comments? Well, thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Great
Thank you all
presentation. I
for,
think we all learned a lot.
thank you. Thank you for taking the time tonight. I don't know if this was a special meeting around this issue, but we do appreciate the time and energy that, that all of you are putting into this. So thank you, and we look forward to getting back here.
We are adjourned.